Hello and welcome to Art on the Creek. My name is Anne and you are looking at a beautiful picture of a powerful mountain lion or cougar. Colorado Parks and Wildlife says we have between 3,000 and 7,000 of these beauties in our state. So let's paint one. So these big cats are pretty much everywhere in our state. In fact, over the western half of North America and most of South America. They weigh anywhere from 90 to 150 pounds, and adult females may be up to 7 feet long, but the males may be up to 8 feet long. So these guys are big. They thrive wherever deer live, and especially here in Parker, we have an awful lot of deer. I've never seen any mountain lions in person, and that fact is fine with me. So we'll just keep this one in our watercolor journal here today. I am using Daniel Smith Buff Titanium, mostly for the underlayer here. I just want to get this first wash on. His ear is Payne's Gray, and earlier you saw maybe I lifted out some of that to create that darker portion on the ear there. I didn't want to put in a lot of actual hair texture on this particular painting. I wanted him to look a little bit like suede, just kind of smooth, which is kind of what they look like from a distance. Of course, I've seen them in zoos and everything, but yeah, not in person. So continuing with the Buff Titanium, I'm using my Lebenzen brush. I love this brush. It is a goat hair synthetic blend and a bamboo handle, and it's just so ergonomic. My hand never gets tired painting with this. I love it. And I would never have thought that my hand got tired anyway, but after holding this one, it's the brush that I really prefer. So, okay, just going in that ear there with more layers of Payne's Gray, just changing the thickness of the pigment to get some darker values there. And if you can see, the tip of this brush is such a fine point, it literally comes to a hair point. So it is perfect for creating this hair texture here. So I'm just going in the ear and trying to do some negative painting to get that area of the ear where the white hairs go into the black. Now I've switched to a burnt sienna, and I really love the granulating properties of this one. I think this particular paint is an M gram. And, oh, you know what? Excuse me. It's not burnt sienna. It's burnt umber. So at any rate, going in, I think I put a little bit of alizarin crimson in those little marks over his eye there, because I wanted to go ahead and do the nose. And I didn't, I blotted it off intentionally just to have a very thin wash, because there is a red light coming from underneath there. That's the best thing when you're color matching for watercolor. What I like to do, and what I recommend that people do, is to look closely at the color and to see what is the underlying color that you see bouncing back at you. It does take practice. You will be able to do it though. You can look at a brown and determine, is it a warm brown or a cool brown? Is this red a warm red or a cool red? And then you can determine from there where you should begin with your colors. Because since watercolor is translucent, my goodness, all of that light will bounce back through what you're painting. So in that way, the medium is really wonderful to work with. Just trying to get all of the clefts and shadows in the tongue there. And now that shadowy part that's underneath the tongue, this is a mix of Payne's Gray and alizarin crimson. I wanted to go in and create a little pink tone to that since it's inside the mouth. And then I will make the lip gum. I guess that's his lip, sorry. I will make his lip a little bit black afterwards with using a combination of either indigo or Payne's Gray. So I'm just filling in the mouth there, trying to get those shadows in. And now I'm making some little marks there along the edge of the chin. Okay, we'll talk about those later. I'm sorry, we'll go up to the nose here. I'm just trying to put in another layer of that alizarin crimson to create the highlights and shadows in that nose. And now back up to the forehead, creating that little dark cap he's got on his head. Again, a mixture of burnt umber or the Buff Titanium, using just different variations of that. And once I've got that wash on there, then I have a damp area that I can drop more pigment into. So that really is helpful. And now I'm putting in more of that concentrated burnt umber into those little spots over his eyes, and now working on his temple. You can see with the shine there, I've got that pretty wet. So now I'm going to go around the side and again adding a wash to that burnt umber, but now I'm transitioning to a yellow ochre because the light here is coming from the left, and that yellow ochre will help to achieve the goal of bouncing that light off of his chin onto his shoulder. So basically the colors that I used for his fur are burnt umber, yellow ochre, buff titanium, and some of that Payne's gray. And again, I do have tints of that alizarin crimson underneath. Didn't use it very much, but in a couple places I did. So just kind of smoothing out and making sure I've got that wet everywhere I want it to be. That area just on the back of his head there, that is burnt umber mixed with Payne's gray. Kind of trying to create that depth of shadow there behind his head. And just putting a light skim coat of that inside the ear. And there you can really see those hair textures come out with that wonderful brush that's got that fine point. It's like painting with a hair. You're painting hair with a hair. Some more of that dark brown in there just to kind of trying to create depth and shape to the skull, working on the shadow underneath the jawline. Whenever you're creating depth in a painting, your lighter areas will come forward and your darker or adjacent areas will recede to the background. So by bringing his jaw forward from his shoulder, I'm going to paint darker on the shoulder area, and that will just naturally bring the jaw forward. So now I've moved this down to regular speed, and you can see some of the work that this brush can do. I'm painting those hair textures in the direction of the hairs. So now we're back up to double speed here, and I'm working on the shadows on that his right, our left side of his face. Okay, coming in with that darker texture, and again, that's still the burnt umber and the burnt umber and Payne's gray. And now I'm going in with indigo to do the lip. Indigo, if you use it in a concentrated enough form, can really read as black. If you look up at the ear, that Payne's gray has a very distinctive blue undertone to it, and most Payne's grays do. In fact, every Payne's gray differs. So for this reason, I really do like to mix blacks to get a good neutral black. This indigo mixed with the burnt umber that I used in the Cougar is going to give me a black that's going to look much more natural on his fur than that Payne's gray. Now, the Payne's gray on the ear is quite a bit softer. As you look at the reference photo, it's quite a bit softer than the black around his muzzle. So for this case, that blue will look quite nice because it will help it recede. So let's learn a little bit more of the Cougar fun facts that the Colorado Parks and Wildlife website offers. First of all, the female gives birth to an average of 2 to 3 young, and they are called kittens. She usually chooses a secluded spot beneath an uprooted tree or a rocky depression. That's amazing because there are a lot of these rocky caves around here. In fact, we were just on a trail yesterday, and I was reading here. We were in prime mountain lion country, which is not uncommon. The trail that we were on had a lot of uprooted trees. It had these cave recessions of rocks, and it also had abundant scrub oak. And the mountain lion don't need the scrub oak, but the deer do. So therefore, the mountain lion would be there. We didn't see any, so that's okay. Care of the kittens rests solely with the female, so it's all up to mom. She will vigorously defend them against male lions, which may kill them, which is also true of the African lion. Seen that a lot on nature shows. The kittens, when they're born, they're a foot long and weigh about a pound. They're covered with blackish brown spots. I've seen those pictures of those too. They kind of look like little baby cougar cats or a bobcat, but they don't have the tufts on their ears. Looks like I've slowed this down to regular speed again, and you can see I'm creating those chin hairs. This is done with negative painting. The hairs coming off of the chin are white, but the fur below it on his chest and shoulder are darker. So I'm going in with that darker pigment and kind of slicing into the white to create a negative white hair coming down. Someday I might do a tutorial on just that negative painting technique because I don't know if you can see what I'm doing here on the video, but if you can't, leave a comment below and I will go ahead and do a tutorial just on that negative painting. So now we're back up to double speed here, and I'm just continuing to work on his mouth. So let's see what the Colorado Parks and Wildlife has to say. Again here, the kittens are foot long and weigh 1 pound. I read that already. They wake up only to nurse when they're about 2 weeks old. when their eyes open and they become alert and playful. And then they're weaned at about 2 months. So this little 2-month-old kitten is going to learn how to hunt through play and exploration, much like all other wild animals, and they watch their mother. And then when they're about 6 weeks old, she will take them to her kills to feed. And as the kittens mature, their spots fade, and at 6 months, they weigh over 30 pounds. That's the size of our dog. And they're capable hunters. So a little small animal could certainly, I think 30 pounds is a small animal. They can hunt. They remain with their mother for another year to improve and hone their hunting skills. So that's directly from the Colorado Parks and Wildlife website, the birth to maturity section. They have a lot more information on wildlife, of course, and also your state probably has a similar website, or your country would have something, how to live with wildlife. I know here there are certain things you should do when you run into a bear versus a mountain lion, and I will find that online before I share that information with you, because I don't want to give anybody the wrong information, because that would be bad. Let's see here, just putting in more of those hair textures and really just enjoying doing this, quite honestly. The sketchbook I'm using is one that St. Louis Art Supply doesn't make anymore, unfortunately, but it is great paper. It's a cold press, and it's 100% cotton, and I think it measures about 7 inches by 7 inches. It's just the best little sketchbook. And I wrote to them and asked them, what happened to the sketchbook? I can't find it on your website anymore. And they said that the person that they had making it for them, who worked for them, she either doesn't make them anymore or no longer works for them. I can't remember quite what they said. But at any rate, it was a little bit labor intensive with the binding. So they decided to scratch this and feature others, which I'm sure are just as wonderful. I haven't tried them yet, because I really like St. Louis Art Supply. It's a good store. I've been able to get a lot of great things from them, in addition to Dick Blick, Cheap Joe's, and then a couple local shops. I have Meininger's and Gyrie's in my area. So when I am not looking for art supplies, I really do enjoy hiking quite a bit. So here is the information of what you should do if you encounter a mountain lion. And I am proud of myself that I remembered it correctly, but I wanted to verify it before I checked with you. What you should do is to make noise, make yourself look big. So for instance, if you're wearing a jacket, you grab the ends of where the zipper would join and hold it up so like you have a big bat wing over your head. You make yourself have a big wing. Make yourself as big as you can. Hold your arms out if you're not wearing a jacket, and just take up more space. Do not crouch down. Don't hide. Slowly back away. Don't run. And if you are attacked, fight back as best you can. It says to carry bear spray or air horns as possible deterrents. I've never carried anything like that with me when I hike, but I tend to hike in trails that are more widely used. And then, of course, keep a close watch on your pets. I did hear of a mountain lion attack fairly recently. A man was running on a very populated trail in Boulder, and he was attacked by the mountain lion, but he fought back, and actually he won. Let me see if I can find that article. Before we get into that, though, I'm going to slow this down here shortly to the actual speed, because I want to focus on the eyes. Now, I'm going in with yellow ochre first, because the green that is in the iris of the cat's eyes is quite yellow. So after I've done that, we'll do this one a little bit faster here. Then I want to go in with a little bit of green, and I think I'm using olive green here, because I wanted that dark ruddy green. It's not a bright emerald green, it's a very dark green in his eyes, but it definitely has a yellow base. Leaving space for the pupil. And I've decided on this one that I would add the highlight back in later when it comes to it, because it has a blue tint, and I wanted to be sure and get that right. So we're back up to double speed here now, and I'm continuing to work on the mouth. When I get to the teeth, that's yellow ochre, and then I added the shadows in with a Payne's Gray, just a really light wash of that. And then to give them that milky white appearance, I do go in later, you'll see, with a De La Rowney Bleed Proof White, and I did tint it slightly with yellow ochre. Now I'm going in with a manganese blue to kind of get the blue in the eyes. Whenever you're drawing an eye, and we can also do a concentrated video on animal eyes, or human eyes for that matter, there is a shadow inside the eye, and the white of the eye isn't white, it is a little bit blue. So now I'm going in and putting that shadow in to line the eye, and you'll see that intensify as it goes on. I like to work very conservatively when I'm working on the eyes, because whenever you're painting an animal, the eyes are really what is going to capture the personality of that animal. So I'm going very slowly. I want to catch every little nuance and just be as accurate as I can. So I am using Payne's Gray now to put in some of those hairs around the eye and just kind of establish just enough to draw more attention to the eye and not have it just look like it's got eyeliner on it. So I do have to differentiate that black as that rim around the eye, not just as a flat line. That's why this really fine tip brush, if you can get a hold of any brush, that will really come to an excellent point that you can handle well. I highly recommend having one in your brush arsenal, because it will serve you very well. And now I'm lining the eye itself, and I've got the pupil in there, and now we'll just speed up this other side here so that you can kind of see the same procedure at double speed. But you can see that eye, the one that we finished there, it's really came to life with that blue tint inside and with the pupil added. And every eye will have a highlight, so don't forget to put your highlight in. This one, like I said, the highlight shines a little bit blue. It's really good if you can have an excellent reference photo too, because then you can really zoom in and see what that highlight entails. And this one, I did use a little bit of that manganese blue tinted with the Rowney Bleed Proof White. And the eye sits inside the head, so you're also going to want to make sure to put your shadows around the eye appropriately. Now I've got a little bit more of that Payne's Gray, just going in and darkening up some of these hair textures. I'm working on the ear and the shoulder there. And now I can share with you that story about the Colorado Trail runner. His name was Travis Kaufman. And apparently he was training for a larger race. But on that day in February, I think it was 2019, he had gone for a run by himself in Lorry State Park and near Horsetooth Mountain Park. After he ran to the summit, he began running downhill, and that's when he heard the leaves rustle in a brush along West Ridge Trail, and that's when he encountered the cat. No doubt a terrifying situation. He did make himself bigger, and he yelled at the cat, and then he ended up getting attacked, and he did fight for his life. So kind of a sad situation, although he did live. And this story, of course, brought to light again that delicate balance between humans and wildlife, sharing Colorado's vast natural places to recreate and enjoy nature. So yeah, it was a really interesting story, and just really we're all reminded of the power of these animals, and not to approach, not to feed, just to really take good care of nature all the way around. So now you can see I've done the molars, and I'm going in and doing the fangs here, the canines, and just adding some yellow to those, the yellow ochre to the Rowney white on the molars, just to try and get them to not be quite so pearly white, because their teeth do have a yellow cast to them. And now I'm tapping in a little bit of wash of Payne's Gray to make sure that all the shadows are in there correctly to highlight the ridges in the molars. And doing some of those striations on the teeth with some of that Payne's Gray or burnt umber. I think I've got a little mix going over there. And now just finalizing the ridges on the tongue, getting that shadow just a little bit more developed. That's something you'll also find when you're working in watercolor. You paint something and it's done, and then you go and you finish the area around it, and you realize you need to punch it up a little bit, which is exactly what happened with the tongue and the nose. I felt like they weren't prominent enough, and so I needed to go in and punch it up. And now I'm putting just a little bit of yellow ochre in the ear there, and then I'm going to call the mountain lion good. And now I can focus on the background. Now, just for a quick, easy background that I thought would evoke a forest or pines, I'm using this Cascade Green. It's a multi-pigment paint by Daniel Smith, and it granulates really nicely, and then it shifts into other colors. So I'm trying to have enough water on there to make this work, and I do like the way that it turned out ultimately. But when it does a really cool color shift, it's kind of got some browns in there, and I don't know that this paper was really the best for it, or if I didn't have enough water, but I'm happy with the background. So I'm just going in with this brush that is a Winsor Newton flat. It is 3/4 inch flat, and it is, oh, excuse me, a 1/2 inch flat. And it is made of Kolinsky sable. It's a really nice brush. So I'm just tapping in some more of that pigment, giving it some opportunity to do its thing. And just making sure I've got the dark where I want the dark. And all those places in the corners connected in with colors so that I don't have any white edges around anything. Put a little bit more on that side, but I want to leave the right edge completely white. And now I'm just tapping in some of that alizarin crimson just to give it some interest over there. I wanted to pick up the red in the tongue and the nose. This big cat is a big hunter, and I was thinking about the kill, and I wanted to make sure that that red was accentuated in the background as well. So now I've got a little bit of pigment on the brush, and I'm just kind of sweeping those the hair textures out. Now I'm gone in with the other brush and doing some more of the same, deepening that shadow just a little bit under his jaw to get that his face to stand out just a little bit more. And I have to say, I thoroughly enjoyed painting this. The paper was lovely. The brush was a great experience. The paints I used were Daniel Smith and M. Graham. I had a really good time painting this mountain lion. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. If you do paint a mountain lion, remember to tag me on Instagram. I would love to see your work. It's just at Art on the Creek. And yeah, that's my Instagram handle. So everything that I do is posted there as well as here. Just finishing that ear, making sure I've got everything on there the way I want it. And then we'll have to go in and add some whiskers after he's all dry. So I'm going to do that again with this great goat hair brush, the goat hair synthetic blend. So let's zoom in here. You can see some of those great hair textures. I'm just kind of scanning them over to make sure I've got everything the way I want it before I get the whiskers in. You can see I've got the whisker lines in. Everything's ready to go. And now I'm going to go ahead and sign it before I get that De La Rowney back out, because those whiskers are thick and they are white. So here we go. I've got that De La Rowney bleed proof white. And I'll put those little eyebrow whiskers in first. And these are just really quick flicks. It might behoove you to practice this a little bit on some paper until you really know your brush, because it's very easy to get these too thick. But I'm trying to get the whiskers to go in different directions. You don't want them all going in the same direction. You don't want them all the same length. So kind of keep looking at your reference photo to see how those whiskers lay and what they do. Some of them are quite long. Some of them are really short. And then I've turned the paper so that I can have the right angle to do the whiskers on the other side. And you can see I got one thick one in there. And I don't know if you guys can hear the background noises, but our cleaning ladies are here, and they are much appreciated. So they're upstairs working while I'm down here doing the voiceover. So hopefully it's not too much of a distraction. But those are indigo whiskers, the black ones. I went in with just plain indigo to do that. And now I'm punching up the eye just a little bit. And here he is. Our mountain lion. You can see those highlights in the eyes with that De La Rowney and a little bit of manganese blue. And I'll zoom in real close here so you can see the detail on his fur and his mouth and his tongue. Thanks for joining me today, guys. I hope you had a great time, and we'll see you next time on Art on the Creek.